As you know, my father's unwell. He's a for Shlema. We added a name Yisrael, so he's now Rabbi Yisrael David Nachman ben Yechevet Shifra. So we will learn, and in his chus Shabbat for Shlema Bekarov. Just say a quick, but he is an original thinker. So we come across an expression throughout the Gemara, and we had it in Gemara Shabbos and other places, that the tzaddik, like Reb Shimon Yochai behind Gemara Shabbos, gave a look at this person. The nasan by Einov, he gave a real look, and the nasa gal shalat summons, the person died, he became a heap of bones. That was his life went out of him, which is very harsh. So my father said that perhaps the pshat in the Gemara throughout Shas is as follows. Nasan boy, what happened was, in the case of Shimon Yochai, for example, this person was, very involved in materialism. Shimon Yochai couldn't understand how somebody can be so involved in materialism. So my father said the pshat, maybe the Gemara is very different and follows. Nasan boy Einov. Reb Shimon Yochai went over to this person and he said to the person, I want you to look at the world from a different perspective. I'm going to give you my eyes, so you can see the world through my eyes, through my prism, and then you will realize that everything you're pursuing is empty and insignificant. So Nasan Boy Einov, he put his eyes, he gave his eyes to this person, and then suddenly when Nasi Gal Shalat Summit, he looked around, everything that he was pursuing was just empty, no life, no flesh, it was just a heap of bones. And then the person came to the realization that his priorities have to be recalibrated and changed, to be more involved in Ruchnius, in Avodas Hashem, and Torah Mitzvahs. Anyway, we are up to the Mishnah here, the Ayin Dalet Amud Aleph. So the next page, a few pages, we're continuing what we said before about a person who makes a conditional get. Mishnah. I am giving you this divorce, almanas, on the condition, so there's a t'nai tag to it, on the condition that you will give me, that he tells his wife, I want you to give me Masayim Zuz, $200. The din is, Harezu Mekadesha, so it's a valid divorce, but it has a rider to it, Vetitin, and now there's an obligation that she has to fulfill the Tanai, the condition, to make the get valid, and she has to give him the $200. What happens if he says, Almanas, on the condition, Shetitneni li mekan v'shleishim yom. He gives her a timetable. This has to be done within 30 days. Then, im nasna loy b'toich shleishim yom migureshes. If she kept to the, we're in Daf Ayin Dalet Amud Aleph, and somebody give him the article.
74A1, the bottom.
Okay.
74A1, the bottom.
Okay, middle of the Mishnah. What happens? If he gave it to him within the 30 days, the Godeshes abided to the condition. But in Lav, if they did not give the money within 30 days, which is obvious, he didn't fulfill the Tanai. Amar Rab Shimon ben Gamliel, Rab Shimon says, said there was an incident, there was an incident in the city of Sidon, Be'echad, a person, he said to his wife, the following is you get almanas on the condition, I want you to give me my coat or my cloak. Give me back my item. The problem was of the tzalasa, she lost it. So the question is now the condition cannot be met, and therefore it's not a valid get, or can she give something in place, in lieu? And the Chachamim said, you know what? She cannot find the cloak. She should replace it and give him the value of the cloak. Because we had in the beginning Gemara Kedushin that Shava and Baba Kam will have Shava Kesef, Ki Kesef. The equivalent money is like money. And we'll discuss this in the Gemara, what Reb Shimon is adding to the Mishnah, who is he arguing with. Says the Gemara. The Mishnah says, if you give a rider to a get, you make it conditional that you have to give me a certain amount of money. The Mishnah says it's valid and she has to give the money. So there's two ways of understanding the Mishnah. Is the pshat that the get is valid right now, and you have now an obligation to fulfill the Tanai, And if you don't fulfill it tonight, then the get retrospectively is not valid. Or do we say, no, the get is not valid until you fulfill the condition, until you meet that condition. So it's an argument between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. My v'tite, what do you mean? And you should give. Rav Huna says v'hi tite. Now what? It's a valid get straight away. It's been activated, but she now has an obligation to fulfill that condition. However, Rav Yehuda says likashet, when she gives the get, that is when the get becomes valid. My benayu, at the end of the day, what is the difference? Because either way, if she does not meet the condition, the get is ripped apart. And it does not become really valid until she meets the condition. So what's the difference? The difference is Ike Benayu, what happens? She lost the get or got ripped up. According to Rav Huna, it's been activated straight away, but it's dependent on the Tanai being met. So if you lost the get after she received it, doesn't matter. Because as soon as she gives the money, what happened yesterday when she received the get, that's when she is divorced. But according to Rav Yehuda, she's not divorced until the very end. If she no longer has the get in her hand, how could she be divorced? Traces learned that Rav Yehuda actually is not learning the way we just said. The big machlek is a shining. Some are shining the way we just said. According to Rav Yehuda, there's no get whatsoever until the condition is met. According to other Rishonim, Rav Yehuda is not certain. Do we say the get is like Rav Huna straight away, or do we say it's later? So we are machmer, therefore. Okay, setting on further. Rav Huna Amar. So the Gemara explains, yeah. Rav Huna, Gemara explains. Huna says he titain ain't a simple get. You don't need a second get because the get was already been activated when she received in the first place. You just have to fulfill the condition. Rav Huna Amar likesh titain only when she gives the money. So therefore, tzricha heimena get sheni. Since the get is no longer around, you need a second get. Says the Gemara. We learned exactly the same arguing when it comes to kedushin. So in the case of get, he says to the wife, "You want to get? Give me money." In the case of kedushin, it's all the way around. He says to her, "If you accept my proposal of getting married, I will give you money." And the same thing. Same question. But we learned, a man says to a woman, "You are engaged to me. I'm with the condition, I will give you $200." She is engaged, but the yitain. You have to obviously meet that condition. V'yitma, we learned my v'yitain. What does it mean? Rav Huna Amar v'hu yitain. Rav Huna says that he should give, and in other words, he should give the money. The kedushin takes place straight away, but he has an obligation to give her. And Rabbi Yehuda says, when he finally gives the money to her, that is when she is mekudesh. Says the Gemara, my benayo, again, what is the difference? Because if you don't meet the condition, in either case, there's no kedushin. And if you do meet the condition, there is kedushin. So what exactly is the crux of their argument? My benayo, what's the difference? Ike benayo, the difference is, what happens if she stretches out her hand and in the interim period and she receives kedushin from another person? So according to Rav Huna, it says that the kedushin takes place straight away, but the husband has an obligation, then she cannot marry two people. So obviously nothing happened. Therefore, what all he has to do is meet the condition, and the fact that she received kedushin from the second person is meaningless because she's already tied to the first person. But Yehuda says there's no kedushin taking place until she receives the money. It only takes place when she receives the money. And now there is no kedushin. Now, this is sort of a proof to what I just told you before. The taste of Yehuda is only doubtful. The Gemara says, if she received kedushin from another person, how do we view that? Why doesn't the Gemara go a step further? L'chatchila, can she go ahead and receive kedushin from somebody else? If she's, according to Yehuda, if she's not married yet to the guy, why can't she change her mind and go ahead and marry somebody else? The Gemara seems to be saying only if it happened, because this proves those Rishonim who hold that Rabbi Yehuda himself is in doubt. It's only because it already happened, okay, but he's in doubt what the situation is. Is it like Rav Huna or not? So therefore, the Chatchila, she should not accept Kedushin from anyone else. Now, the obvious question is, the principle is the same. Why do they have to argue by Kedushin and by Gittin? Says the Gemara, the Gemara will go through both opinions. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Huna explain why they have to argue in both. We need to argue both. The Ashmina Gab Kedushin, if he only knew by Kedushin, I would say as follows. Bahar Kamar Avahuna, only by Kedushin, Avahuna says that the Kedushin takes place straight away because he loves her and he wants to go ahead with the marriage. He wants to. He's not trying to put any delays. And therefore, he wants the marriage to be activated straight away, and he wants to entice us, so he'll give us some money. So therefore, Avunda says the marriage, the Kedushin is effective more or less straight away. But in the case of Gittin, where he doesn't really want to divorce her, just things aren't working out. So maybe he is trying to delay. Maybe Rabbi Huna will agree Rabbi Yehuda is trying to delay in order that maybe somehow or another he can appease her and make her feel more at home or make some shalom bias there.
But he's the one giving the get. So why we would appease her? I mean, could you say no?
Give her a get because she hates him and they're not getting on.
She hates him. Okay.
He's the one who has to give the get, but she, yeah. But so he says, Shricha, we need it. The Iyashmin, and in fact, I don't know if I told you this year, the Rambam holds, not everyone agrees with him, but the Rambam paskins, which is fascinating, even though we always say that it's always up to the man, the woman had, before Chenda Menegeshim, but the Rambam holds if a woman says, Ma'us alai, I find him repugnant, repulsive, I can't even look at him, it's despicable, she can go to Bezin and the Bezin would force him to give a get. So, even this before the Menegeshim, that a woman does have options of how to get out. Other Rishonim don't agree with him. So according to the Rambam, it's definitely in the case of Mos, he has to try to appease her that she shouldn't find him so Mos. He promises to improve or whatever it is.
What are you referring to, Rabbeinu Geshem?
Rabbeinu Geshem is the one who said that you cannot divorce the wife on your own, the husband. He needs her consent. Right?
Okay.
So, Utzricha, says Margis, minute. I would say.
Follow the Rambam? Does this father follow the Rambam?
Who?
Does they follow the Rambam?
It's not brought down in Shulchan Aruch. We don't pass like the Rambam.
Mm-hmm.
Why? You think they do?
I don't know. No.
No, it's not brought in Shulchan Aruch. Utzricha, we need it. Kadi Ashmin and Gabi Kedushin. If we need it, my Kedushin, how come over here? Rabbi says it. Who yitain that he has an obligation to pay, but the Kedushin takes place right away. And Mishum to the Kravikos. He wants to go ahead and proceed with this marriage. When it comes to Gittin Daf, that he doesn't really want to divorce her, maybe he can try to appease, he's trying to delay it. Maybe Rabbi Yehuda agrees with Rabbi Yehuda that the get does not take place straight away, only when she gives him the money. If we only knew his principle when it comes to Gittin that it takes effect straight away, I can say, but Rav Huna says that the get takes place straight away, and she will give him the money, and he's happy to have the get effective straight away because he's not embarrassed after he gives her a get to ask her, "Where's my money?" Because there's no relationship anymore. So therefore, he's convinced that he will get his money. He's not embarrassed to ask her for the money. Abu Gabi Kedushin, when it comes to Kedushin, perhaps she'll agree to the marriage and you're trying to entice her with money, and she's thinking, maybe you'll never give me the money. And they're newlyweds. She's too embarrassed to ask for the money, as if to say, oh, the only reason you married me is for my money. The ksiful mitbei, she's embarrassed to ask. 1 second, the Kedushin is not effective until he actually gives her the money. So therefore, we need to argue in both cases. So that explains Rav Huna. What about Rabbi Yehuda? The Iyashmin and Rabbi Yehuda, the same thing. Why do you have to argue in both places? But exactly the opposite of Rav Huna. Because Rabbi Yehuda holds it always takes place when you meet the condition. The Iyashmin and condition, I would say, but if you're only over there, when you actually meet the condition, Mishum the Ksiful admit, but she's embarrassed to ask for the money. So therefore, we say the condition should not take effect until the Tanai is met. When it comes to divorce, the man, the husband who has no relationship with his wife anymore, has no shame and no busha whatsoever to ask her for his money. Maybe that they can take place straight away. If we only knew this principle when it came to Gittin, according to Rabbi Yehuda, I would say, but how come only by Gittin Rabbi Yehuda says wait till the condition is met? Why? He's trying to distance. What's the whole purpose of a get? To distance, and maybe he wants to appease it, so he wants to delay it as much as possible. By Kedushin, he wants to bring her closer. Maybe if he was moided that the Kedushin takes effect straight away. Therefore, we need both. Therefore, we need to argue both. Says the Gemara, I'll ask you a question. Says the Braise, the following is your get almanas on condition shetitni li masayim zuz. Give me your get on the condition that you give me 100 zuz.
That's the Mishnah.
No, 1 second. No. It's a Braise. This you get on condition you give me masayim of 200 zuz. Okay, that part so far so good. Then we say, Afal pisha nikra haget oishenevet. This is an addendum. It's not in the Mishnah. Even though the get disappeared before you met the condition of the Tanai, you ripped up or got lost. Migudeshes. Now, what's the possible explanation? Why is she divorced? When the money changed hands, when she gave him the money, was no longer a get in existence. It's because it's retrospective that the get took effect as soon as he gave it to her. It's exactly what Rav Huna said. Question on Rav Yehuda. And then it says here, but she should not marry anyone else until she actually meets the condition of the get. Because if she doesn't meet the condition of the get, then the get is not a valid get, and she comes out that she's a married woman when she got married to somebody else. Okay, there's a whole machlekes rishonim. If she did get married, and she received the get, she owes now $100 or $200 to her husband, to her ex-husband, and she goes ahead and gets married. Are we going to force them to separate, or we're going to rely that eventually she will meet the condition or not? And the Ran learns from here, from this brisa, that this is a general rule on all conditions. Whenever there's a get with a condition, she's not allowed to get married until she actually fulfills that condition, because we are worried that you won't meet the conditions. We're always worried. Okay, others disagree. Says him further, we look at other Braise, this you get give $200, the mace, and he died. Nasna, if he fulfilled the Tanai, then the get has been before he died, and obviously the get's a valid get. And doesn't marry her brother-in-law. Nasna, if she did not fulfill the Tanai and the husband died, so she cannot meet the Tanai, giving the money to the heirs is not going to help anybody, because the husband wanted the money, and therefore the get is not valid, and she has to marry her brother-in-law. However, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, he disputes that, and he says you could give the money to the heirs, and that's good enough. Now the question is, if according to Rav Yehuda, the get does not take effect, is not activated until she meets the Tanai, what does it help if she gives the money to the person's children? How does that help? But the fact is, the get will take effect after the man dies. You can't give a get after Misa. So the only way to explain it is we follow Rav Huna, that says that the get is valid the moment you gave it to her. So the Gemara,
why does she need a get if he dies?
She shouldn't have to marry her brother, so they had no children.
Okay, Yovam. Okay. Libum. Okay.
Rav Shimon ben Gamliel oimen leisenes la'aviv, she can give the money to the guy's father, or la'achiv to his brother, or la'echem and la'krevin to any of the relatives. Says the Gemara, ad kalan, the Mefarshim have a hard time understanding what do you mean one of the relatives when if there's a brother-in-law alive, and that's the whole purpose. The only reason why you're right, the only reason why we're giving a get is because there's a brother alive. If there's no brothers alive, what should they get for? Doesn't need to get at all. There's no advantage of being a divorcee. On the contrary, she cannot marry a kohen. A widow, she could. So the only reason why we're talking about this is there's a brother. If there's a brother, he yashins, or he takes over his brother. How in the world are other relatives? What right do other relatives have to come in and take the money? On what basis? Who are these kravim? It says la'achi brother or kravim. Who's that? Difficult. Anyway, so the entire argument here is merely if you can pay off the Yoshev is good enough. But the get would be a valid get. Must be that the get has taken effect while the husband is still alive, like Rav Huna. When he said, give me the money, I meant me personally, not to my heirs. Leave after the Yoshev to my heirs. But everyone says that what is a condition, and the get would have been valid. Tiyuvta de Rav Yehuda, Kash Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda comes along and says, Ha mani rebihi, these particular Brais, knows Rav Yehuda saying, If you remember, we learned before already the concept of almanas. If you add the word almanas, we had we had before mahayim malacham mati. The person says that this get should take effect today and after the person dies, and we had a suffix. How do we view that? Is that a change of mind or is that a condition? But then you have almanas, which is like ma'achshav from now. And Rebbe says that every time you say almanas on the condition, that means you want it to take effect straight away. So these two brises follow Rebbe, who says almanas ka'achshadami. Therefore, he says that's why the brisa hold. As soon as you gave her the get and you said almanas, it's been activated. Now we just have to meet that condition. But I follow the Rabbanon who don't agree. So in fact, the argument of Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda is, this is how Rashi learns, is whether almanas is k'ma'achshav dami or not. Rav Huna paskas that almanas is k'achshav dami, and that everyone agrees almanas k'achshav dami. And Rav Yehuda says, no, there's a dispute between Rebbe and the Rabbanon, and I paskan like Rabbanon that almanas is not k'ma'achshav, and therefore the get is not activated until she meets the condition. So Rabbi Yehuda says, Amani Rebbe. The authors of this brayso is Rebbe. Amar Rab Huna, Amar Rebbe, Kolaim, Amanas, Kaim, Achshav. Say Amanas as if you say, I want to be activated straight away. Upligi Rabbanon Allah. But I believe that the rabbis argue with the Rebbe. And I follow the view of the Rabbanon. That what? That it's not Kima Achshav. It's when you meet the condition, that's when it takes effect. Or like Taisha says, Rabbi Yehuda is not 100% certain who the halacha is like. So he's machmir. But Amar Rab Zayda said, Yahavinan the bubble. Abzeda used to live in Bubble, and we're going to learn about Metzia that he then fasted 100 fasts, so he should forget the style of learning of Bubble, so that he goes to Eretz Yisrael, he'll take on the style of learning in Eretz Yisrael. And we know that Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish, if they argue with Rav and Shmuel, the halach is like Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish. So that style of learning was, at least in those days, that was the halacha, like Rabbi Yechon and Rish Lakish. So he wanted to forget the style of learning of Bubble. So and he went to Yisrael, and he had to hide. When we had the Neksubas, he had to hide from his Rebbe Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds you're not allowed to leave Bubble to go to Israel. You're not allowed to make Aliyah. In fact, he says, you commit a sin. But Rabbi Zayda said, when I was in Bubble, I heard this halacha, but when I was in Israel, I heard different. He said, Amar Rabbi Zayda, Kehavina beBubble. When I was in Bubble, Amrina, we said, when I was in Bubble, I heard, that like Rabbi Yehuda said, that there's an argument between Rebbe and the Rabbanan whether Amanas is ka'achshav or not. But Kisaliki, when I left Bubble and I went to Israel, I once met Rabbi Asi, the Yossi who was sitting there, saying there Rabbi Yechon, that Hakol Maiden, there is no dispute. Everyone agrees. But if you say Amanas, is Ka'im Ma'achshav. In fact, the only dispute between Rebbe and the Chacham is that Mahayim La'achamisa, which we had already in the last few days. If you say Hayim and then you say La'achamisa, so do we say it's a suffix whether it's a divorce or not a divorce? Because are you changing your mind? First you thought Mahayim, let this get be active today, and then you change your mind. You said La'achamisa. I don't want to take effect La'achamisa, which is impossible. You cannot have a get. So there's nothing here at all. Or do we say he added a rider that Mahayim today? When La'achamisa, when this person says after I die, that's when the get should become retrospectively activated, right? So it was a Megadeshes, Vein Megadeshes, or suffix. And Rebbe disagrees. Rebbe said, Kazeh get, that's a get, it's definitely a condition. That's where they're arguing. But they're not arguing about Almanas. Everyone agrees Almanas is Ka'achshav, which is what Rav Huna paskins. Says the Gemara. But Tanya, we actually look at the brayso exactly like that. What does the brayso say? The brayso says, Mahayim La'achamisa. That's when they argue. Get the Einu get. When you say Hayim, it's a question of whether are you changing your mind, you're just adding a condition. And Rebbe says, no, because that get, definitely it's a condition, it's a valid get. Says the Gemara, according to Rabbi Yehuda said that they have two arguments. They're arguing Bahayim Mulachamisa, and they're also arguing if we say Almanas, is Almanas Ke'achshav, like you're saying, I want it to be activated from now, or Almanas is just saying on the condition, and when you meet the condition, that's when it should be activated. Well, Rabbi Yehuda says Almanas plea. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, how is he going to learn the brayso? And what's the question? Why argue Why argue in a case where it's quite? Let them argue even more so. Let them argue in a case of Almanas, which is in a way a bigger chiddush, and tell us that Almanas there's an argument, and Rebbe holds that it takes place straight away. And so therefore, surely Rebbe would hold that Mahayim Malach Hamisa, you spelled it out, Mahayim. Surely it takes place straight away. And talk about that. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that they're arguing in Amanas as well. Says he want to know the reason why we mentioned Mahayim Malach Hamisa, because on the other hand, Mahayim Malach Hamisa could very well be when you said the words La'achamisa, you are changing your mind. And Rebbe says, no, regardless of that, it sounds like you're changing your mind. I'm saying it's a condition. So therefore, we want to tell you that Rebbe holds that even in this case, it's a valid get and she's a free woman. Says the Gemara, why don't we argue in Amanas and tell you that the Rabbanon are so machmer? Not only in a case where maybe it looks like you changed your mind, but even if you didn't, you just said Amanas, the Rabbanon said there's no get until we don't say Ma'ach Shadami, it's only a get after the person dies, and there's no get here. Says the famous answer, Koyach the Heteda Odifle. Whenever there's an argument, and somebody's machmer, somebody's lenient, will always try to highlight the one who is lenient. And the reason for that, as Rashi tells us, is there's no kunst to be machmer. To say something is also anybody can say. To say something is mutter and to be and should be based on halacha, that requires a lot of knowledge. And as I say in Yiddish, you need break the places. So therefore, we'd rather highlight somebody who says that it's mutter. Okay, then the Mishnah continued. If the person gives a timetable that the Tanai has to be met for 30 days, and it has to be met in 30 days, otherwise you haven't met the Tanai. So isn't that obvious? He gave a time. I would have thought when a person gives a time, they don't really mean it has to be done by that time. So why did they give a time at all? Well, there's another cause. They only did it. They wanted to make sure that person doesn't become lazy and then eventually you keep on procrastinating. You'll forget about it. So therefore, I'm giving you a short-term time that you have to do it. But if you missed it, it's all right. Commercial on that, no. If I give you a set time, it has to be done by that time. Okay. Then Rav Shimon Gamliel came along and said in our Mishnah something which seems to be totally unrelated to the first part of the Mishnah. The first part of the Mishnah was talking about when you give a condition with, let's say, money has to change hands. So the get is valid, but you have to meet the condition. And then comes along Rav Shimon Gamliel, tells you a story that happened in Sidon, that there he asked for his cloak back, and they lost it. So the question is whether she can give money in lieu. And Rav Shimon Gamliel says the rabbi said yes. What does that have to do with anything, with the first half of the Mishnah? And generally, we don't bring a story unless we're supporting one side of an argument. Who's arguing here? Says the Gemara, my Tana, what did we learn in the Mishnah? The Tani Maisa that we have to bring the story. Says the Gemara, there are actually some words missing in the Mishnah. The Hachik Tani, this is how you should learn. Im Allah, if you say to her, Amanas Shetitnili Itztalisi, the man says, I want you to give me back my cloak. But of the Itztilasa, these are the words that are missing. And it got lost. Itztilisi, Dafke Kamala. The rabbis say it's not a valid get. You can't compensate me. I want my coat back. Maybe I don't want any of my things there. Or I want to harass you, and I want specifically my coat. You should return me my coat. I want my reclining chair back, whatever it is. So therefore, if she didn't meet that condition, it's not a get. Comes along, Rav Shimon Gamliel says, no. Rav Shimon Gamliel says, Titan loy as the man. Rav Shimon Gamliel says she can compensate it and give him money in lieu. And right now we think that Rav Shimon Gamliel says that he wants the value of the coat. So if you don't have the coat, give me the value. Same thing. That's what the Gemara thinks right now. Says the Gemara, and Rav Shimon Gamliel, to prove my point, he says here, the Ma'asenam Tzidin Bechacham Lishna is a story in Tzidin where somebody said to his wife, Harei ze Gitte, if this is you get, Almanas, on the condition, Shetitnili, Salisa, give me back my coat, but of the Salisa, she lost it, Salisa's coat, but Amrachamim Titinlai as the man. Pay him out. Says the Gemara, Boy, Rab Asi asked Rabbi Yechon a very interesting question. We have a concept called forgiveness. How do we understand, let's say somebody owes me $10, and I said, I'm moichel you the $10. How do we understand mechila? There's two ways of understanding mechila. One way of understanding mechila is, you know what? You don't owe me the money. You don't owe me I'm taking away the obligation that you have to give me that money. The other way mechila is, I'm going to consider as if you gave me the money already. What's the logic? What do you mean? But he didn't. What do you mean that as if you gave me the money? The logic is as follows. The Ran says the logic is if you paid me, you gave me the $10. I can then turn around an instant later and give it back to you as a gift. And there's an expression we had in Morah Ksubas at the end. Hafuche matrasa lamali. Why they turn around, give it to me, give it back to you? It's a tircha, it's a pain. You know what? Keep the money and we'll treat it as if you gave me the money and I returned it to you and I gave it back to you. So the question is mechila. Is mechila as if you didn't pay me, but you don't have to pay me? Or is mechila as if you did pay me and I just gave it back to you? Now, what's the relevance of that? Let's see the Gemara here. Says the Gemara, the following question. The following is a get. I'm giving you a get on the condition you give me $200. Then he turns around before she gave him that money. He said, you know what? I'm foregoing it. Now he didn't cancel the Tanai. He's just saying as if the Tanai has been fulfilled. Is that good enough or not? Mao. And Tiboy, my question is, according to the Rabbanan, who are very particular, when he said initially, I want my coat, it's only his coat. And Tiboy, Rav Shimon Gamliel was much more flexible and said a coat can be money, coats are all the same. And now he explains this question. Tiboy, Rabban, I'm going to ask you the question according to Rabban. I can say as follows. Ad can like come Rabban Hassam. You know why the Rabban say over there that you have to give the coat back and not money? Why? He never said to you don't have to pay me. He's still waiting for his coat. So therefore, you have to give the coat. But over here, he said clearly, he said, I am Meichel you. And because he said, I am Meichel you, so maybe that's it. You don't have to pay anymore. Or perhaps, or the other way around. Even if Shimon Gamliel says that money is good enough, you know why? The fact is, you gave me money. But over here, he got nothing in his place. He said the $200, I'm going to you. What did he get? Nothing. In other words, Mechila is not interpreted as if you gave me the money and I gave it back to you. Mechila is I'm foregoing the loan. Who said you can do that? I made it when I gave you the get, it came with the Tanai. Maybe you haven't fulfilled the Tanai, so the get is not valid. You have to give her a whole new get. So how do we view it? Says the Gemara. Malays, ruled, she is not divorced. In other words, a big machlek is achreinim is he's saying according to Rabbanan or even according to Shimon Gamliel. But in other words, mechila is not considered as if you gave me the money and I'm giving it back to you. Mechila means I'm foregoing the debt, and therefore it doesn't help. Because when I gave you the get, there was a Tanai there. And to come later and say, I'm foregoing, how's that help? If mechila means like I never received it, so you did not fulfill the Tanai. You have to give her a new get. That's what Rabbi Yechon ruled. Second, when I have a question from Gemara we had in the Dor. The Gemara says there, somebody says to his friend, I am going to ban or proscribe all my products, all my assets, any asset that I have, that you cannot have any benefit from it whatsoever, like a carbon, that I don't want you to have any benefit from me whatsoever. Everything's forbidden to you, unless if you don't give my son kur echad shel chitin, my son is destitute, he needs a kur of wheat, or shtei chavish shel yain, or he needs 2 barrels of wine. If you don't give it to my son as a gift, don't ever come into my house again, or you can't have any benefit from me whatsoever. Says the Gemara. Rameya says, well, asur achayite. He cannot. This person cannot have any benefit from you whatsoever. The mother cannot have any benefit until he provides the wine, the wheat to your son. However, the Chachamim say, Af ze yochel lahatir es nidre. This person easily can wiggle his way out of his vow. How? Shaloi abi chacham. You don't even need the assistance of a rabbi or a chacham. And why is that? Because he has the right to say, Hareini ki ilis kabalti. He has the right to say, I'm going to treat it as if I received it, and therefore, because as if I received it, so you fulfilled the Tanai, and it's good enough. So what do we see here? You said before that mechila means that I have forgone the debt, but not that I received it. I didn't receive it, but don't worry about it. Here we see clearly it's ki ilis kabalti. It's as if I received it. So in the case of a get, it should be a valid get, as if I received the money. That's the Gemara's question. Says the Gemara, Hachi Hashta. What are you comparing? Hasam over there, over there, what was the whole purpose of asking his wife for money? He wants to make, or asking for the coat. He wants to make her life as difficult as possible. And therefore the rabbis say, if he's meichel, it doesn't help. His intent was not because he needed the coat. He just wanted to there's a lot of hate there, unfortunately, and he wanted to make her life difficult. Being meichel, he's not fulfilling the Tanai whatsoever. So if he said, I forgo, it doesn't help, because the fact is he didn't meet the Tanai. The Tanai was to give her pain and harass her. But a hach over here, when he said, I want you to provide for my son wine and wheat and all that, mishum havachu, the whole purpose is he wants the son to have the benefit of the wine and the wheat. And the hola itzrich, but they no longer need it. He's saying to them, don't worry about it, they no longer need it. So therefore, it's as if they received it. Here, the intent was not to give anybody pain. The intent was the outcome. And the outcome was that they should have the benefit. But they don't need the benefit anymore. I can say I'm Michael's as if they received the benefit. Okay, says the Gemara, I have a problem with that. Who Gabra? There was a person. The person said to his sharecropper, Kuliyama, Dolut Class Dalvas, everyone, generally sharecroppers, 3 times a year, they irrigate the fields. And the arrangement is that they get a quarter of all the crop, have a share in the crop. But I want to improve my field. So therefore, you know what I want? Doli Arba, I want you to irrigate my field 4 times, the Achal Tilsa. And then you will get a third of the profits. You to put more work in, you get a third. But what happened was, L'Soif Vasamitra didn't have to irrigate it the 4th time because it rained, it was a good rain season, and it was all right. And the question is he still entitled to get a third more than the average sharecropper because that was the arrangement? But on the other hand, he didn't irrigate it a 4th time because it's not necessary. So how do we use that? An argument of Yosef and Rabbah. Rabbi Yosef said, Rabbi said, the fact is, he didn't work a 4th time. Why should he get any benefits? He's back to the original arrangement, which is a quarter. And Rabbah says, Rabbah says, no. They made a new arrangement, a third. He's ready to do it, but there's no need for it. What's going on here? What's the crux of the argument? Lamer say that Rabbi Yosef, the Amak Rabbanan. Rabbi Yosef follows the view of the Rabbanan that says that it has to be dafka a coat, and you cannot do any money. So therefore, in this case, you can't give me rain in the place. I want you to irrigate. You didn't irrigate, you're not getting the benefit. I got it from somewhere else, but it's not the arrangement, like the Rabbanan. And Rabbah holds like a Shingam Lil, that if you don't have the coat, you can give me money instead. You didn't irrigate it, but it rained. The fact is, I got the outcome. The outcome is the main thing. It's not the means, it was the end, and I got it. Says Gemara. So that's what Gemara wants to say. Says Gemara, does that really make sense? Well, Kaimelon, let me ask you a technical question, not a logical question. The rule is Hilchas Kavasa the Rabbah. The rule is like Rabbah. In fact, it says that the rule is like Rabbah, except in 3 instances where the rule is not like Rabbah. It's a big machlek is Rishonim if it's only Masechta Baba Basra, or in entire Shas, that the halach is always like Rabbah. In fact, the Rishonim bring a raya from here that it's the entire Shas. So the halach is like Rabbah, which means that what? That he still gets his third, even though he didn't have to irrigate it. But yet, you explained the reason is because we follow Shimon Gamliel, right? You follow Gamliel. It's I don't care if it's a coat, the money. You don't care if you irrigate it or the rain irrigates it. Yet over here, ain't halacha Shimon Gamliel. Even though we have a general rule, the halacha Shimon Gamliel, there are 3 exceptions, and one of the exceptions in this case right here. So therefore, Allah is not Rosh Gamliel. So how can Rabbah be based on Rosh Gamliel when the halach is like Rabbah and the halach is not like Rosh Gamliel? Doesn't work. So what's going on here? What is the argument between Rabbi Yosef and Rabbah? Everyone agrees with Rabbanan that in the case of itzlis, it has to be dafka the coat. So Rabbi Yosef holds like the Rabbanan has to be dafka the coat. Dafka if you irrigate the field, rain is not going to supplant that. However, Rabbah say no. The case of the coat is different. Why? Another Rabbanan. I can agree with the Rabbanan. In the case of the coat, they want dafka the coat. They're very particular. But over here, rain is good enough. Why? Over there, what was your purpose? You don't really need the coat. Your purpose is to cause pain. So therefore, since your purpose is to cause pain, you want dafka the coat. And if you can't find the coat, no get. Over here, mishum havachu. Over here, you want the field to improve. You want more rainwater. Well, the fact that you didn't need it. So the Rabban also will agree. You got what you wanted. So therefore, you have that arrangement. Taish already asked me, find in other Gemaras, a very interesting concept which we're learning about Matzia. You hired workers to do, let's say, to irrigate your field, and then they come to the field to irrigate, and suddenly it rained. The din is, you can tell the workers, I don't need you anymore, goodbye. I don't have to pay them a cent. How is that compatible with our Gemara right here? That says by the sharecropper that he's entitled to get a third, even though you didn't need his input. So Taish makes a difference between a sharecropper and a person. When you hire a person for one specific job, Taish holds. Not everyone agrees, but if you hire a person for one specific job, and then it's no longer necessary the job because it was done by somebody else or it rained or something, then you can send them off and you don't have to pay them a penny. Over here, a sharecropper doesn't only irrigate the fields; they plant the fields, they sow the fields, and they irrigate. They do everything. They prune and they take out the weeds because they do everything. This is just one of the jobs. And if they're fortunate enough that it rained, that particular job they have to do, they are entitled because the moment you made that arrangement, they were ready, and they're sharecroppers, so they have a chelik, they have a share in it. They get whatever it is. There's a big argument. And the Rishonim, this thing the Rabbana is so particular about the coat, is it only because it's a coat? What about if it would have been money? If he said, I want $200, and instead of $200, she gives him a watch. Is it because it's a coat or it's anything? And that's an expensive thing. What about a cheap thing? Are they also very particular? So this is a big machlekes in halach. And I continue the Gemara. So they further.
Isn't there a difference here? The husband wants something from the wife, right? He wants a coat, but here the rain the Eibishter gave. He wasn't the person who asked.
True.
So
it doesn't matter. But my main purpose, the point of the Gemara is, in the case of the rain, I don't care. It's not that I want you to do it. I want the rain to be in my field. And generally speaking, you need to irrigate the field. I need water in my field, and therefore they irrigate. But I'm not makpid that it's you that has to do it. I'm makpid that I need water. So if it rains, I got my water.
Except the difference in that case is that it's actually costing you whether or not the rain came from a Kadosh Baruch Hu or the rain came from the sharecropper. If the share came from the sharecropper, it's going to cost you an extra 10%. But this way, if it came from God, it didn't cost you. You saved 10%.
What do you mean cost you? Cost you what? You mean in wages?
Yeah, you're giving him more. You offered him another. You offered him a third instead of a quarter.
But but again, when I made my arrangement with this guy here, remember Tase's ad that he's a sharecropper. In contrast to an ordinary worker. You're right. If it's an ordinary worker and I tell him I want you to get the field and then that morning it rained and there's nothing for them to do, I don't have to pay them. You're right, because of the cost. Over here by a sharecropper, because he has a chelik in all the crops and everything else in the land, therefore the moment you made the arrangement, he already was kinda. He was already kinda. And it's part of overall work. And therefore the rain afterwards that came from the Eibishter doesn't in any way take away.
So what you're saying, it's similar to say you have to do weeding. What happens if weeds didn't come? He still pays him, even though he didn't have to weed.
That's true, but see, weeding is different because he actually has to bend down and go through the whole. He did the work just because the weeds weren't there. He still has to go and look. And
so if he didn't weed, then he doesn't get paid by a sharecropper.
What if the job is to make sure that
the sharecropper gets told these are the things you have to do to deserve your share of profit.
But the job there is not to weed. The job is to make sure there are no weeds. So if there are no weeds, he did his job.
Right. Okay. So it's the same as the rain.
Okay. Yeah. True. But the rain. True. Yeah. You can say the same thing. Yes. Let's think about it further. More continues. Okay, there's a thing called if you sell, you sell a field we had before. There's two kinds of fields. There, chuzah, it's a Yerusha or stay mikne, and stay mikne. You sell it, you're able to come back to you. Stay Yerusha, chuzah. If you don't take it back, and the gabbai of Hegdish, let's say, sells it on somebody else, you don't get it back. And then we had about a bias. We had more in Bahar, in Chumash Bahar. So if you have a house in the Bot Yerachima, we give you an opportunity to buy it back, and after that, you forfeit your rights to buy the house back. You have 12 months to buy it back. So what happens? The guy finally got some money. He obviously sold his house because he was desperate, needed money. But somehow or another, he was able to work hard during the year and he made his money back. So now he has the right to buy it back, but you only have 1 year. After that, you forfeit your rights to the house. It doesn't even go back to you. So comes the last day of the year, you found the money, you want to go to the guy and give him the purchaser, you want to give him the money to get the house back. But the purchasers, you know what they all did? They all went on overseas trips on the last day. So the guy couldn't find him. So he shouldn't have to buy his house back. That's what happened. So Hillel, just like Hillel made a special takana when it came to Prusbul, he made another takana to help those people who had to sell their house. So he says as follows. We learned over there in a Mishnah. In the beginning, on the very last day of the 12 months, they would hide, make sure that they're not available. So the house would end up with the purchaser. His skin Hillel Hazakin. So Hillel Hazakin came along and made a takana. That the vendor, if he goes to the buyer's house and he cannot find the buyer, he goes to a special chamber, or they made in the Bezdin or somewhere, that special room, a place where he throws the money in, and we're going to treat it as if he gave the money back to the purchaser. He can break the door down of his house, the nickness, and repossess his own house. And the aim is and the purchaser will gain nothing by saying, I never got the money. And the purchaser will come around to his senses, will go back to this room and collect his money. That's what Hillel said. By the way, it's a big, interesting machlekes. Okay, before we get to that. So we're going to talk about now the concept of if you give a sin about karchach, if I give something to somebody against their will, is that considered giving or not? As Tosfos later on explains, there's three kinds. If I give a gift to somebody against their will, they're not koine. I can't force the person to take a gift from me. In fact, we'll have a Merkadushin saying the Matanas Yichya and Mobasa. People don't want gifts necessarily. Okay. On the other hand, if I owe money to somebody, and he loses nothing by me giving his money. On the contrary, he benefits. It's his money. Then if he says, I don't want it, I don't care. I can force him to take money. I can throw it into his house. Too bad. So in case number one, I cannot force him at all. Case number two, of course I can force him. The argument is in case number three, where I give you, I owe you, I have an obligation to owe you, but if I pay out my obligation, you lose. For example, in the case of the house right here, if I buy it back, I have a right to buy it back, and I owe you the money. But you're going to lose now the house. You, the buyer, are going to lose the house that you bought. What happens in this case? Can I force you, Baal Korchach, to take the house? The same thing by a get. If a woman, I tell the woman, here's a get, and you have to give me $200, and then she gives me $200. The man doesn't want to take it. Can she force him to take the money or not? In that case, there, she has an obligation to pay the money, but he loses out by accepting the money. He loses his wife. So what happens in this case? So says Rabbah.
Just a minute, can you add another dimension to the case of Batei Arechoma? Is that the Torah obligates the person to return the house. So he's under a chiyuv for that 12-month period to return the house.
Exactly. On the one hand. On the other hand, he is incurring a loss. He just lost the house.
Well,
so
that's
now
bad luck. The Torah that's a Torah tag gave that.
Yeah, but maybe the Torah is only talking about is that he accepts the money. If he accepts the money willingly, then the house goes back, reverts to the owner. The Torah's main purpose is that after the year, the moicher can no longer retrieve his house. So during that year, if the buyer refuses to accept the money, what happens? It's called the sin about korchach. In this case, where the buyer loses out, does he have to accept it? Is he mechuyev to accept the money? The main purpose of the Torah's thing there is, but the 12 months are over, you forfeit all your rights. The Torah is not out to tell you that the buyer has to accept the money.
Yeah, but during the 12 months, forget about the last day where you've got this problem where he's not there. But anytime during the 12 months and he's there, and he says, "Here's the money, I want the property back." He can't say, "No, I don't want to give you the property."
Why not? That's the question. The sin about karchach.
So what's the whole idea of what's the takon of the Torah to allow the original owner to get it back by having
the main takon of the Torah? The main takon of the Torah is more that after the year is over, he can never get it back. He can't take it in turn and everything else. We'll see in a minute. This is the story that happened. Makes no difference if it's the last day or the second day of the year or the 5th day or 100th day. This is what happened. What was happening? Obviously, the guy didn't have the money straight away. Then why would he have sold the house in the first place? So it takes time to accumulate that kind of money. So what was happening was that it came towards the end, and obviously he went mooching and he borrowed money right, left, and center. He gathered, accumulated enough money to buy it back. So, but this is a story. What happened was I guess it was very common that he's only able to get, when the pressure is really on, he's able to get the money. Came the last day, and suddenly the buyer disappeared. Hayela denenu. So Rava says, why did Hillel have to make a takana? Just go in and throw the money in the backyard. Proves that an asina bal karcha generally is not an asina. So Hillel had to make a special takana. Says the Gemara, Rava says, Rava, the takana shel Hillel from the Hillel's takana nishmas quite obvious. If a man says to a wife, I'm giving you a get on the condition, give me $200. If she gives it to him and he accepts the money willingly, obviously she met her condition, she's megudish. But al karcha against his will ain't megudish because there's no special takana from Hillel, and an asina bal karcha is not a valid asina. He can't force me to accept something. So even though I'm the one who made the condition, I said give me the money, but now I don't want the money, so I don't want your money, whatever it is. So she cannot be conditioned, and the get is not a valid get. How do I know that? Because otherwise, why would Hillel have to make a special takana in the sin of Bakarcha to have the sin that's a valid sin? Miklal, the fact that Hillel made that takana proves the Baalma generally in the sin of Bakarcha, the sin is not in the sin. That's what Rava says in this version of Rava. Maskiv Rav Papa asks a question. We already discussed last time that Rav Simi bar Ashi was not Rav Ashi's son. In fact, he was the Rebbe of Ashi. Was according to some, but he definitely lived in the generation preceding. He was a student of Rabbi. The Dilma, Rav Papa said, who told you? Maybe you know why he'll have make a takana? Because the guy disappeared. He went in hiding. Maybe in the sin about karcha is in the sin. You know when? If the person is standing in front of you and you give it to them against their will, it's a valid sin. If the woman goes to the husband and gives him the $200, even though he doesn't want it, too bad. Why did Hillel make a takana? Because the person disappeared. What are you supposed to do then? So that's when Hillel made a takana. When the person's not around, it's still a valid nesina. But otherwise, maybe nesina bakarcha is a valid nesina. The person's not around. The person is around. Whether he's there or not there, it's a valid nesina. It is a good nesina. Others say, Amar Rava, there's another version, the opposite. This is from the Hillel's takana. I can learn, I can glean. If a man says to a woman, "Here's your get," Al Menashe Titlenli Masayim, give me $200. The Nosnalay, and she gave it to him. Bein medaite, bein makarcha, having a sinner. Whether he was there, whether he wasn't there, it's a valid nesina. Why? Sorry, Hillel made a takana. Yeah. When did Hillel make his takana only shaloi b'fanav? So this is what he's saying. Hillel made his takana only shaloi b'fanav. In other words, the guy disappeared. Avo b'fanav, the guy was there. Bein medaite, bein malkor chamatana. The guy was there. I don't care. In other words, Rav is the one who's saying the sin of balkorcha is a valid sin. Why did Hillel have to make a takana? Because the guy disappeared. But the guy is present. It's always a good matana. Yeah.
Because if you learn the Chumash Pashat Pshat, it says that the Chumash says to you that every time after you sell this house during this 12 months, you get your money, you get money to give him, he's got to take it back. I mean, that's the Choyra what the Torah is saying.
Yeah, he has a mitzvah to take it back. What happens if he doesn't want to? What happens then? So he's doing the wrong thing.
And you can't, you're saying he's doing the wrong thing, but you can't force him,
That's the question. Exactly, and the sin about karcha is not considered on the sin amount. So now in this version, Rav is the one who's saying that the sin about karcha is a valid sin only if the person is present. If the person is not present, no. And Hillel's takana was that the guy went in hiding. It's still a valid sin.
We could also apply the takana of Hevger best in Hefker. They could say, you know what, your sale from this guy by the guy who's living there now was never a sale, and you're living there illegally. Get out.
They could, but the Rabbanon are very limited when they said it. I mean, they only said it in all the cases that we had in Shas when they said it. They didn't say it in this case. Hillel came along with another takana. He said that the sin about karcha generally is no good. But in fact, it could very well be that is the basis of Hillel's takana. When he said just throw it in this room and that's good enough, how is it good enough? He never gave it to the purchaser. Maybe that's exactly what you said. Maybe that's how they used it, based on that.
So this means that if the balabos disappears from the first day onwards, you've got to really wait till the end of the year to throw it into that room, or you've got your money available 2 months later, can you throw it into that room according to Hill, or you mamash have to wait till the last day, till the end of the 12 months?
You have to wait because maybe he'll come back. You don't know he'll disappear the whole 12 months. It's only the last day when you have no other recourse.
So no, okay. So that's the only time you can use Hillel's solution.
Yeah, if he's not there, or it depends which version. According to one version, even if he's there, according to one version, the sin of Bakach isn't a sin if he's there, so you can do it straight away. And the takana is only when if he disappears. Maskal Papa, and here in this version, it's the other way around. They're the ones that are saying maybe the sin of Bakach is not a sin at all. But Dilma, even if he's there, it doesn't help. In that case, then Hill would have made it the whole year. Doesn't make a difference the last day. What's the difference? If you're telling me if the guy, in other words, if the guy is not there, it can only be on the last day. Because just because he's not there in the second month that you want to buy the house back, wait. But if you're telling me that even if he's there, the sin about Korchach is not a valid sin, and Hill had to make a special takana that it isn't a sin. Why Hill spoke about the last day is because it was a story. That's what was happening. But it makes no difference which day of the year it is. The guy is there. He doesn't want to take the money. You could force him 100%. So depends which, if the guy's there, nothing. So my talking. So they're saying maybe the sin about Korchach is definitely generally not a sin, even if the guy is standing in front of you. But over Hill, why he made it the last day? Because that's what was happening. Says the okay, we're almost finished. There's a big machlekes of shaynim. If interesting machlekes, if a guy made a tanai and then there was an oinus, we had a whole discussion about gittin if tainus oinus like gittin or not. We had a special takana because of snuas and prutzis in the beginning of ksuas. So we had if a guy makes a tanai and then he didn't meet the tanai purely because of an oinus, so we say that it's not his fault and that and it doesn't mean that the tanai wasn't fulfilled. What happens if you had a year to do it, 6 months to do it? And you procrastinated, like most people. Yeah, I have 6 months. What's the rush? And then suddenly the last day you said, I'll do it, and an oinus happened. Is that considered an oinus or not? And they want to bring a proof from here. This guy here waited till the last day, and we're talking here about, when we're making special takanas to help the guy out. So doesn't that show that even though you're a procrastinator till the very end, it doesn't matter. As long as you still have time that you could have done it, and an oinus happened only in the last minute, it's considered an oinus. It's considered an oinus.
But you have the story, if the guy says, I'm going to give it, what's the story, and he can't cross the river, and he's on the other side there, and he says, I'm here, I just can't cross it, there's no boat.
Yeah, but that wasn't a procrastinator. He wasn't a procrastinator. It might have taken him 30 days to get there. He said, well, I'm not back here. Let Boston Kalash Yom, and he was on the other side. And that's not a procrastinator. I'm talking about you could have done this anytime you wanted. You just waited till the last day. Yeah. So Machlek is the Rishonim, and the Shulchan brought down as well. Let's just finish the Gemara. It says the Gemara here. Whenever we find a machlekes of Shimon ben Gamliel and others in the Mishnah, halacha kamosh, halacha is always like Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Chutz, 3 cases. The case of an Orev Kablan, which we learned before. An Orev Kablan is somebody who's a guarantor, and he says, "I'm a Kablan, I take full responsibility." But when the lender wants to collect his debt, the borrower happens to have assets, has money, has assets. Can the lender go directly to the guarantor, or he has to go first to the borrower? I'm talking about an Orev Kabul, not Stam Orev. Rav Shimon says they have to go to borrower first. The Chachamim say no. In the case of Orev Kabul, you can go directly to Orev. We pass like the Chachamim. The second case here is Tzidon, which is what we just learned in our mission over here, when he's asking back for his particular coat, and they lost it. And Rav Shimon says, well, you can pay out with money. Chachamim say you can't. And the third one is Rayach Rein. Rayach Rein is when the Bezdin says to the guy, you have any other proof to whatever your case is, and he exhausted all of the evidence, but he exhausts all of the evidence. He said, nope, I have nothing else. So the Bezdin made a ruling, and a few days later, he comes with witnesses that he found. Whether we trust him that these witnesses are, didn't come up with a new story, or whether this is actually real. And so in these cases here, we do not paskin like Rav Shimon Gamliel. Okay, we'll continue with Shem.